Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth event in our Disability, Identity, Culture, and Community series. We begin our event this evening with a land acknowledgement. The University of Massachusetts Amherst acknowledges it was founded and built upon the unceded homelands of the Pakuntuk Nation on the land of the Norwottuck community. We begin with gratitude for the nearby waters and lands. We recognize these lands and waters as important relations with which we are all interconnected and depend upon to sustain life and well-being. The Pakumtuk have had connections with these lands for millennia. Over 400 years of colonization, when the Pakumtuk peoples were displaced, many joined their Algonquin relatives to the east, south, west, and north. That includes the Mashpee and Akanwa, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Narragansett, Mohegan, Pequot, Mohican communities, and Abenaki and other nations of the Wabanaki Confederacy. These Native peoples still maintain connections and relationships of care for these lands today. We also acknowledge that the University of Massachusetts Amherst is a land-grant university. As a part of the Morrill Land Grant Act, portions of land from 82 Native nations west of the Mississippi were sold to provide the resources to found and build this university. As an active first step towards decolonization, we encourage you to learn more about the Native nations, whose homelands UMass Amherst now resides on, and the Indigenous homelands on which you live and work. We also invite you to deepen your relationship to these living lands and waters. My name is Elodie Carell, and I will be your host for this evening's panel discussion on disability activism at UMass. I am an undergraduate student in my fourth year, double majoring in psychology and disability studies. I am also a member of several disability-related groups on campus and an employee of the Assistive Technology Center. To assist in making this event more inclusive, each presenter will begin their talk with a visual self-description. As I said, my name is Elodie. I am a white, feminine presenting individual with short brown hair that hits at about my chin. I am wearing a shirt, black button down with mushrooms and butterflies on it, and have a white background behind me. This event series is brought to you through a UMass Campus Climate Improvement Grant from the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and is co-sponsored by the Alliance Against Ableism, the History Department, Disability Services, the College of Education, the Bachelor's Degree in Individual Concentration Program, UMass Amherst Information Technology, the Developmental Disabilities and Human Services Letter of Specialization, Afro-American Studies, UMass Allies for Illness and Disability Access, or UMADA, and the Stonewall Center. A couple of administrative notes. Both American Sign Language and CART captioning services are available this evening for those who wish to use them. If you are looking to have the ASL interpreters on your screen, you should be able to go into your settings and pin them. If I missed information on that, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We are happy to answer them. The chat feature has been disabled for attendees, but the Q&A feature will be available, and you may enter a question in the Q&A at any time during this event. The moderator for this evening's event is David Paquette. David Paquette, who uses he, him, his pronouns, has been working as a disability educator, activist, and advisor for over 10 years. David identifies as an individual with a disability, namely depression and anxiety, and has spent much of his career dedicated to creating more equitable and inclusive educational and work environments for disabled individuals. David is a recent graduate of the Higher Education Master's Program at UMass Amherst. While at UMass, David was a member of the Alliance Against Ableism. His work with the Alliance focused on building disability community and addressing attitudinal and structural barriers impacting disabled students. He currently works as an academic advisor at Landmark College in Vermont. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to hand the moderation of the event over to David.
Thanks so much, Elodie. I am super excited to be here today for a number of reasons. This marks in many ways the first formal event discussing disability activism at UMass, despite the fact that it's been happening for decades here. I've traced it back to at least the 1950s. So I couldn't be more excited to be a part of this panel today, moderating it. I'd like to start off by giving a visual self-description of myself. So again, I'm David Paquette. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a masculine presenting white individual in my mid-30s. I have blonde, sort of wavy hair that falls to about my shoulders. I'm wearing glasses and I have a short beard. Before I have the other panelists introduce themselves and give a brief description of their bio, I just wanted to quickly review the overview of the format of this discussion. So it will run about 2 hours in length. The first hour will be dedicated to answering some predetermined questions with the panelists. Then we'll break for a brief break and come back, and the second hour will focus on answering audience questions that are put into the chat throughout the discussion. So Griffin, I'm wondering if you could start us off by both introducing yourself and giving a brief bio, and then feel free to popcorn to the next panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Elodie, and thank you to everybody that's put this on. This is Griffin. I go by he, him pronouns. As for visual description, I am a white masculine presenting person with a shortish beard, full beard, and short black hair. How old am I? I'm in my mid-20s, and I am a current graduate student, first year of 2 in the School of Public Policy, doing the Master's of Public Policy and Administration degree. I actually came to UMass as an undergraduate and graduated in 2018 with a psychology degree, and I went through the DDHS program here. And I think that, you know, it's such a great experience to come back to UMass and experience really the flourishing disability community and become involved in that. And I feel that as an undergrad here from up to 2018, I really missed out on that. And so to come back and have that and be able to push for a lot of this stuff and become more entwined with everybody is really great. Major initiative I'm working on is the now Ruth Silver Cultural Center, the Disability Cultural Center that we are trying to get official recognition and funding from UMass. So that is my big project that we are working on. I hope I did not forget anything, but I will popcorn it over to Hillary, is just right next to my box. So I'll popcorn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Griffin. This is Hillary. My name is Hillary Montague Asp. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a white, fat, feminine presenting person. I have long blonde hair that goes midway down my abdomen, and it's purple underneath. I'm wearing makeup and have facial piercings, and I'm also wearing a black shirt. I am a current PhD candidate in social justice education here at UMass, and I'm also the graduate assistant at the Stonewall Center. I have taught some disability justice courses here at UMass, and also just got to write a book chapter, a co-authored book chapter with some really awesome folks about ableism and disability justice that will be coming out in the fall. I have also led a number of workshops and presentations across the 5 colleges on ableism and disability justice. Yeah, that's me. And I will go ahead and popcorn it to Josh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Pearson, and I am a white, masculine presenting human in that weird 2-week age gap between 29 and 30. I have right now a very long, scraggly beard and kind of longish, darkish hair. I came into UMass in 2010 as an undergrad, graduated in 2015. While I was there, I started to, excuse me, lead a lot of presentations around equity and diversity. I identify as a blind person and also somebody with depression, anxiety, PTSD, that wonderful little smorgasbord there. Following my undergrad time at UMass, I worked as departmental assistant and then eventual director of the Assistive Technology Center. And while there, tried to really instill AT and accessibility in the hearts of the entire campus. And an intern who did some incredible work, Deanna Ferrante, and a couple of other folks got together, and myself, and we realized we were hearing the same kind of stories from all of the students and some of the faculty that we were engaging with, doing this accessibility evangelism all over campus. And as a need to deal with that kind of systemic nature of ableism and particularly UMass's way of viewing disability, we formed a group, and the Alliance Against Ableism has been going strong. I left the university in the fall of 2020. I'm now a program coordinator for an organization called the Polis Center for Social and Economic Development. I do a lot of prep, making sure that high school students and some current college students have really solid grounding in disability identity and kind of survival skills for entering into higher ed. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I am going to popcorn it to, I'm going to send it over to Maya.
Hello, my name is Maya. I use she, they pronouns. I am an African-American woman. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, and I'm also autistic, which I think is important for my presence in this space. I'm currently wearing a light pink hat with light makeup on, eyeliner, mascara, and a blue hoodie that says "eye rolling is my cardio," because rolling is the only cardio I do, with a white background and a blue painting behind my head. I'm very excited to be here, as I've spent about the last year doing digital advocacy online, returned to campus after the pandemic, or well, not after, we're still in the pandemic, but came back to campus after remote access and was slapped in the face with just how many access barriers I was struggling with, and have been very frustrated and upset ever since. Have been working with different students on campus, different administrators, advocating for accessibility. So I'm very excited to see what everyone has to say. And I apologize for speaking too quickly. I will be more mindful. Or rather, is there anything that I need to reiterate or restate?
This is David again. Maya, you are great. Katie, do you want to do the next introduction?
Yeah, definitely. Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Norton. I am a white female presenting person. I have long curly blonde hair, and I am wearing a green sweatshirt, and there are also colorful and white lights in the background. I identify as hard of hearing. I have been hard of hearing since birth, and I wear hearing aids in both ears. I am an undergraduate student at UMass Amherst in the Eisenberg School of Management. I'll be graduating in May, which is super exciting. Kind of sad, but also really excited to see where life takes me after UMass. I currently work in the System-Wide Accessibility Department of the MBTA, and it has been a great way to learn more about accessibility, especially within transit, and that is something that I'm really passionate about, and hopefully that will lead to a full-time job after graduation. I'm also a member of the UMass powerlifting team here on campus, and I'm really, really passionate about lifting as well as advocacy online. And we'll go to Zach.
I hate talking about myself, believe it or not. And for those that know me, they will probably say I can't shut up when talking about myself, but here goes. Good evening, everyone. Name is Zach Stewart. I am a current junior here at the university. I am an African-American Black male presenting person wearing a Aeropostale red sweatshirt with a white background behind me. Don't mind the messy-ish desk that you might be able to see. Haven't had much of a chance to clean my room as of yet. Current African-American Studies and Legal Studies double major, and graduating next year in the spring of 2023. And I recently applied for the 4+1 program through the School of Public Policy here. And so I'm waiting to hear about that. And I'm also in the process of, or will begin the process of applying for a Fulbright scholarship to do research overseas. And my focus has mostly stemmed from racial and social justice activism with regards to making the campus more racial and socially just. And so disability activism is fairly new to me, but I am excited to be here, and I am excited to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you for having me.
David again. Thank you so much, Zach, for that intro, and to everyone for introducing yourselves. Let's dive into the questions, shall we? So our first question is, to get started, could you please describe your current involvement with disability activism at UMass Amherst? What issues have you been most focused on, and why are those important to you? And Hillary, would you like to get us started with this question?
I would love to get us started. Thanks, David. So my involvement with disability activism on campus might look a little bit different than some of the other panelists. My activism is primarily on the individual level, working one-on-one with students to listen to and affirm their experiences and try to help or support wherever I can. For me, this looks like doing things like making lists of questions together with people before doctors or psychiatrists' appointments, writing down important points that folks want to bring up, sometimes driving people to doctors' appointments, sometimes attending doctor's appointments with people, calling insurance companies or making lists of things to say to insurance companies, attending meetings with the dean of students with other students to do things like retroactive course withdrawals, that kind of stuff. And then also just teaching about disability justice and ableism, mostly to graduate students, but also to undergrads, leading some orientation sessions at Smith, doing presentations at the 5 College Queer Gender and Sexuality Conference, that kind of stuff. The areas that I'm most focused on, or I will say my my disability justice is most focused on racial justice, fat justice, and LGBTQ justice. And I'm focused on those areas because as a disabled, so I would say I'm disabled because I have depression and also chronically ill that with an illness that's sometimes disabling because I have multiple sclerosis. As a disabled and chronically ill fat queer person, those are sort of my passion areas, and those are a lot of the identities of people who I love and care about. And for me, racial justice is a passion area because I'm white and I don't have a choice not to be passionate about that. Yes, I think I will. I think I'll leave it there.
David, again, thank you so much for that response, Hillary. Would anyone like to follow up on that? Yeah, Maya.
For starters, I had no idea that your position and those types of resources were available on campus. So that is absolutely fantastic. This is a great learning experience for myself as well. And also hearing more about the individual level of activism and the different ways that you can do that on a one-on-one type of manner. Like I hadn't really thought about that or considered that because I come from the perspective of working in social media and digital platforms where it's reaching as many people as possible and becoming more or becoming less personal, which is one big difference. So one of my main focuses with activism on campus is with regards to physical accessibility. As a full-time wheelchair user, the number of potholes, the lack of accessible buttons, just all of the physical features of campus were extreme access barriers to me that I could not have possibly imagined any person with a similar level of disability coming into UMass as a freshman and succeeding here. Like I'm a fourth year, I have a group of friends already. I'm familiar with accessibility somewhat on campus because I used a wheelchair a few years ago before the pandemic started. And coming back, it was just, I felt like a fish out of water. It was so difficult to adjust and so difficult to manage. And so I started really focusing on meeting with different administrators and advocating for an increase in physical accessibility. But right now, I'm honestly taking a break from said activism. I have become too burnt out, the toll that it has taken on my mental health with all of the things that I have asked for, pushed for, and worked with different administrators for, seeing how little has changed and how little support has actually occurred has been a little too difficult and heartbreaking to manage. So I've taken a break for the last few weeks. I've had some time to breathe and reset, and I'm really excited to be on this panel tonight and learn more about the other things that are happening on campus to dive full send all the way back into it. I'm really excited and I can't wait to hear more about the different things that you guys have going on.
Thanks, Maya. Yeah, Griffin, go ahead to follow up.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I can offer a little bit of a different view too. So I think when I came here in my undergrad, as I mentioned a few years ago, I took about 3 years off before coming back. I did not have a relation to the challenges I was facing. So I have depression, anxiety, ADHD, that kind of whole that melon. And I didn't really understand myself through the lens of disability, no matter how many challenges and medications, kind of therapies and all that kind of stuff that I went through as a young adult and as a child. Coming through, I still didn't operate on the understanding through disability in that lens. And when I left the university, when I kind of barely scraped out of school, I went to work at an independent living center for people with disabilities, kind of a peer support, if anyone doesn't know, independent living centers. And from there, coming back to UMass, after a few years of working in disability advocacy, I really kind of came back thinking, I remember all of the challenges that I had, and I don't want other people to have to go through that. And so a big thing for me is changing that perspective on campus and increasing disability kind of not awareness, I guess, but like acceptance of the idea of disability, what it means to be disabled. I mean, the idea that basically everybody that of what is disability and what is accessibility and what is a good space for society to create together is really just backwards right now. And so a lot of efforts I've taken have been to increase that kind of knowledge. So I was able to get a disability policy class being taught right now in the spring semester through the School of Public Policy. I'm trying slowly with a lot of the other faculty here to do disability studies program, and then the Disability Cultural Center is part of that as well. And really trying to understand and change how people understand themselves and how the administration and faculty understand disability as a whole.
Thanks for that, Griffin. This is David again, the moderator speaking. Would anyone else like to respond to that initial question?
Hi, this is Josh. I'll respond real quickly. My current UMass involvement is very limited, given that I'm no longer, employed by the university. But I keep in touch with various people in the disability community there, and pop into meetings every once in a blue moon. I feel very strongly about the university's commitment to accessibility and to disability, as it very much matches what I do. So right now I work as an employment specialist, and I prep incoming college students to have all of the skills they need. For myself, I came in very grounded in my blindness, what I thought was grounded in my blindness, having been blind since birth, and came in with a fair amount of skill, converting my own textbooks and dealing with different kinds of supports, doing that advocacy alone, one-on-one, professor to professor, and did that advocacy as a student while also dealing with the inaccessibility of buildings and the lack of Braille signage places, and realizing that there were solutions that were being built. There was a project through the engineering department that is probably still there somewhere, focusing on indoor navigation. And then when I took on the assistive technology director position, we started to create an outdoor navigational system, things that really seriously impact your daily ability to navigate around that space with ease, with comfort. Something as simple as a Braille signage that is correct, that makes the difference of, do you walk into the right bathroom for your gender? Walking down a hallway and trying to find a classroom and realizing that the door opens up onto stairs, right? So digital accessibility is extremely important. Physical accessibility is extremely important. I'm extremely passionate about this because the effect that living in an inaccessible environment had on me, it took a very serious toll on my mental health, and really woke me up to the fact that I had some work in embracing that side of my disability as well. So grateful in a roundabout way to that. And I eventually had to walk away because the level of inaccessibility and the misplacement or just general neglect of putting funding into ensuring that a quarter of the campus population is treated equitably all the way around across the board wasn't happening. So I'm with you, Maya. Like, protect your sanity. There's no point sacrificing yourself. We can't do the work if we let the systemic things get to us.
This is Maya speaking again. I fully support and agree with everything that you said. The only thing that I could think to add is that if I could walk away from it too, I would. I'm a full-time wheelchair user. That's.
Hi everyone, this is Katie speaking. I think I'll just talk a little bit. I don't have too much experience with activism more than just personal activism at UMass, as I've been really lucky. Like I mentioned before, I'm hard of hearing, and so most of my accessibility issues have been in the classroom and not actual campus life. And I am very proactive when it comes to letting my professors know exactly what I need, and also letting them know that I'm not going to back down if they deny me anything. And so a lot of my advocacy has really been just letting professors know, educating them on how they can accommodate students that are hard of hearing, but then to also be mindful that there might be other students that have disabilities that don't want to declare it, and that they should be mindful of that and honor it, even if they're not registered with disability services and all of that, to just remind people that you never know what someone might need and that you shouldn't question them on needing something.
David again. Yeah, thanks for that, Katie. And I think Josh and Maya, you both really brought up important points about disability being included in the diversity paradigm, and it's often an overthought, and also the fact that disability likely represents a huge portion of the student body, right? Like 20%, if not higher. And the fact that we know disabled students in many cases are half as likely to make it to graduation. Like you wouldn't allow any other student population to exit higher ed at that rapid of a rate. So all of that just speaks to the importance of the advocacy that I hear happening and being expressed in the room right now. And if folks are okay, can we transition to our second question? Does that sound all right? Great. So our second question is, what have been some positive experiences you've had with disability activism, either at UMass or just broadly in your lives? And Katie, would you like to get us started with that question?
Yeah, definitely. So this is Katie speaking. I think the biggest thing has been, I mentioned a little bit that I am active on social media with disability activism, and just the messages that I get from people saying, you make me feel so seen, and how sometimes it's really hard to talk about what you are dealing with. But if you can even just impact one person's life and make them not feel so alone in feeling alone, that makes it so worth it to just completely share all of my experiences. And also with professors, just educating them. Sometimes people deny you access simply because they don't know and they don't realize, and they're not trying to be a bad person, but they just genuinely don't know. And so being able to take the time and educating people and allowing them that aha moment and realizing how important it is once they do now has been just really rewarding. And it's, sorry, my Zoom stopped. And it's just been really rewarding and amazing. And that's the reason why I continue to advocate, is just the response of, you've helped me feel better, you've helped me feel less alone.
This is David again. Thank you for that, Katie. Would anyone else like to respond to that question? Yeah, Maya.
Building off of what Katie talked about, sorry, this is Maya speaking. Building off of what Katie talked about with connecting with other disabled people out there and showing other disabled people that this is okay, that you can be you, that things can work out. That's been one of the most exciting and uplifting things with my platform, is the different things that I do online. While I have been frustrated with the specifics of changing things at UMass, through the different videos and things that I put out, and through talking about my experiences with this activism, it's shown other young disabled individuals at their own universities that, hey, you can do this too. You can talk about things, you can be yourself, you deserve access to these spaces. The way that your professors and classmates are treating you is not okay, and it can change. That's been really exciting. But the thing that I enjoy most about activism, specifically at UMass, is all of the community that I found, the people in the Alliance Against Ableism, the Disability Cultural Club, and all of the current active members of Access UMass, in addition to all of the other disabled people who I found who aren't in these community, or who aren't in those groups. It is absolutely amazing. And all of the people are just so lovely and supportive. And I love the community here. So thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Maya. This is David speaking. Yeah, I can honestly say I love the community here as well. I haven't experienced anything like it before and have yet to experience it after leaving. I really appreciate that sentiment. Would anyone else like to respond to this question?
Yeah,
Zach.
I can speak on it a bit. For me, this is Zach speaking, and largely for me, my diagnosis, or one of my many diagnoses, is cerebral palsy with a nonverbal learning disorder. So the palsy itself manifests physically in that I present as though I walk with a limp on my left side and with a curved left wrist. And the NVLD makes it difficult for me to understand social cues. So I tend to have a hard time making a whole lot of friends. And it's been a journey kind of navigating that throughout my time here at UMass. And I'm grateful for the people that I have in my life, both here and at home, that have made this experience what it is and have allowed me to kind of be more myself and to just be really, without having to compromise different parts of my identity or to compromise myself and my being and what that looks like. And just recognizing that I'm a person, and that as I've gotten older, I've gotten stared at less. I've gotten a whole lot less questions, and it's beautiful because honestly, there were those nights when I was younger, where at times it's hard when you're a young kid and you don't necessarily know what's going on, but you're different. Obviously, besides the obvious, besides me being black, of course, but there's something different about you, and that people ask questions, that people stare, and that they're, sometimes the questions aren't necessarily malicious in nature, but the way they come across, you just don't feel the need of answering them. But as I've gotten older, those questions have ceased, and those stares have mostly ceased. And I think, being here, as much as it is challenging at times, and as much as there have been times where I've wanted to transfer, not to be honest, frankly, but it's been nice to know that I have people in my corner, whether that be, like I said, friends, professors, disability services, my case manager in particular, and just the outpouring of support that I have for me in recognizing that I'm a person and that I'm more than just this thing that I have, and that I'm worthy and deserving of being treated as a person.
Thank you for that, Zach. Would anyone else like to respond to this question?
This is Josh. If I could jump in real quick. I came in at the very beginning of all of this, and it's so gratifying to see this this work being carried on. So much of it that we have to do, we do individually for ourselves, this advocacy work. And when I first had the idea kicking around as a student, and then later as a employee, working very closely with students of, hey, we need a group, we need a place where people can share these stories. So much of it, once those conversations started happening, it was like, okay, this is not all in my head, right? Like, these experiences are happening to other people. Other people feel these things and celebrate the successes and deal with the challenges. And it was a group that, for me, finding that sense of community And it started by identifying allies. You go person to person around campus and you do that education of what the disability experiences is like, first by you just living it. And then if you're fortunate to be given a platform where you can share your experience, people are receptive and are willing to listen. So as frustrating and as tough as it can be to live in the identity and the system that doesn't accept it day after day after day, that's also the world, right? UMass is like this wonderful microcosm of the world that we live in. And in many ways, it preps us to do that advocacy work afterwards. So I'm very, very grateful for the experience because it's made me a stronger person. And I now know that I have that sense of community, even though I'm an alum at this point. My people are still here. That feels really good.
Thanks for that, Josh. I remember my first week as a grad student at UMass, I kept talking to people and telling them I was interested in disability and disability activism. And every time your name was the one name that came up. And then I eventually met you. And that was almost 3 years ago. And it just feels really amazing to be here today with all of you, like sharing these stories, hearing like current students and just the evolution of what this has grown into. It's hard to put into words. It feels really incredible. Are we all right to move on to the next question? All right. So, has your activism built on or created alliances across different groups or identities on campus? And Zach, would you mind getting us started on this question?
I can, yes. And this is Zach speaking. As I mentioned in my bio, my focus since my time here at the university has been racial and social justice. Excuse me. And, that has largely, even within that focus, that it grew and it didn't necessarily stay within that one sphere of just working strictly with BIPOC folks or racial or ethnic minorities or what have you. It grew to include minorities, that had disabilities, minorities that were of different gender identities and sexual orientations, minorities that didn't necessarily know that racism was such a prolific issue on campus and wanted to get involved. And ever since then, it has continued to grow. And I am proud to say that the work that we've done and we continue to do will hopefully leave an impact. Whether that remains to be seen is to be determined. And I know, at least for me, it's been an honor and a privilege and a blessing to be able to do this work and to be able to do it with people I consider friends and people that have essentially become like family, in how close we've grown and how the work that we've done has made us closer, and has united us in ways that might not have united us before. For example, some of those demands, just a bit of background. The work that I've done and have been doing revolves around a list of demands that was sent to upper administration in the summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. And some of those demands including reallocation of campus police resources to places such as the Center for Counseling and Psychological Health, University Health Services, Residential Life, the Men and Masculinity Center, the Center for Women and Community, and and other demands as well, focusing on the needs of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and just making sure that their needs weren't just being met, but were being succeeded, and that they were given the same chance of success that their white counterparts have been given essentially since UMass was founded. And since that summer, that work has been ongoing, and talks have essentially talks essentially grounded. Grounded might be the right word. Yeah, grounded in the sense where when people graduated, things kind of fell to the wayside. I had to take some time off. I was able to come back last fall, and so I've just been trying to get back into it with that. But yeah, I would definitely say, not just across difference with regards to identities in terms of the work that I've been doing, but definitely with regards to the understanding that it's necessary for work like this to have different opinions, and to have different folks coming in and understanding that that one singular opinion isn't monolithic. Again, well, not again, sorry. Barring any opinions that border on dehumanization, because that's just not that's not cool. But I say all that to say, yes, the activism that I have taken part in and continue to take part in has worked across difference, and will continue to do so going forward.
Thanks for that, Zach. This is David again. And I think to respond to your question, has it had an impact and has change happened? Yes, I believe it has. And I think in many ways, this panel represents some of that change that is already beginning to happen over time. Would anyone else like to respond to that question? It's also in the chat for reference. Yes, Hillary, I saw you first.
Thanks. This is Hillary. I think sort of by nature, I work at the Stonewall Center, which I can be more clear, is the LGBTQ center on campus. And so the disability activism work I do is almost always with queer and or trans individuals. And then at the Stonewall Center, we as a collective staff of both, and that I'm using air quotes around the word professional staff, and then student staff, we all work together really to center things like disability justice and racial justice in our work. And so we have built relationships with various groups across campus, and I have gotten to work with students involved in various groups, but also students, disabled students with a lot of different identities, students of color, immigrant students, like I said, almost all queer and trans students. So I think even on the individual level, we can see some of what Zach was just talking about.
Thanks, Hillary, and Griffin, I saw your hand go up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, both echoing what Hillary and Zach said, that so much of my understanding of disability has been informed in the oppressions of other groups. And so to be queer or to be Black in America, or Indigenous or Latino and Latina, all of these histories and histories of oppressions have informed so much of how I understand the oppression of disabilities too, and my understanding of accessibility. And so, yeah, like it's completely changed in terms of this overarching idea of liberation for liberation for people with disabilities means just liberation for people, for everybody. Um, and yeah, and I mean, I could go into it, but I just want to, for time's sake, not. But yeah, I mean, there's so much. It's one of my, yeah. So it's so much of all of these, the ways that these oppressions coalesce around each other. Really can help inform people of their place in society and where they fit and how we move forward with activism.
That Griffin. Are folks okay with moving along to the next question? Great. So our next question is, what have been the biggest barriers or challenges that you've encountered in disability activism? And Josh, would you mind getting us started with this question?
Sure. So again, a person enters into this work on an individual level. So first you come in as a student and you're advocating, pardon me, you're advocating for your right to be in physical spaces, right? I've had just about every professor during my undergrad, and I've heard this echoed by students as well. Professors have questioned whether or not I could be in that space, right? So the activism manifests itself there individually. You're trying to survive in this location, prove to people that you have the right to be there, not come across as needy or too demanding, because you're also trying to set a really good impression for that person, especially if you come from a low incidence disability. And the pressure from having to do that on an individual basis can burn people out. If you're able to realize that things happen at a systemic level and you get to that point of being able to do that activism, honestly, it comes down to education, right? Because the education that you do as a student on an individual level, you then have to carry forward and do on a more systemic level. And you're trying to find the right levers and knobs to be able to pull to get people to understand. And that for me was the biggest difficulty, particularly because of the type of work that I was doing at the time for the university, which was evaluating documents, right, leading trainings on accessibility, ensuring that there were appropriate staffing considerations to deal with accessibility, and that it wasn't just lip service, right? That people weren't doing this to say we need to avoid litigation, that people actually understood when the message came at them, look, this is the right thing to do. And for me, that was a particularly difficult thing. I would sit down regularly with senior level administrators and people and go through a demonstration of this is how inaccessibility digitally breaks a website. And then I would walk around campus and find all of the inaccessible signage and the fact that that is dealt at on a person by person basis, rather than as the university saying we need to provide appropriate signage or provide appropriate considerations, put the resources into developing the things that are available, the projects that were started specifically to deal with navigation, the same way that you put resources into other research, realizing that disability services offices historically and assistive technology professionals historically are understaffed and underfunded, and that can affect a lot. That professors don't view accessibility as a core part of their job, that can affect things. On a personal level, having departments not sure how to make content best accessible. And I realize it sounds like at this point I'm airing a lot of dirty laundry, but I think it's important we need to recognize the reality of all of these things, if they're not done on a systemic level, right? If they're not done by the institution, putting forth the money, and really showing that it values its employees and its students, those impact people on the individual level that are trying to do the work and just get through their day. There are a lot of people out there w- I this I struggled with the idea of starting Alliance Against Ableism because I didn't want it to be my group, right? I didn't want the label. I didn't want to be the advocate and the activist. For me, I was just trying to get through my day and survive college as a student and then survive as an employee. And running into so many barriers, some of which are financial, some of which are attitudinal, some of which are, questions of do people fully understand disability who are in the positions of power to actually do something about that? Um, and and dealing with those individual things, uh, and then also the wider systemic problem, it can really wear on a person, and it can affect their identity, because so much of this work, if we do it on the individual level, is presented through the lens of our identity. That's the only way we know how to show the disabled experience. And so to not have that understood or feel like it's just lip service, at some level, um, a person can internalize that and feel like um, that really impacts their identity, and that they're not trying hard enough, right? That their best effort at making people, trying to raise awareness, help people understand why all of these things are so important, um, is not good enough. So that, for me, that's the toughest thing, is trying to navigate that and stay sane and live through it. Um, and for me, not that it was a comfort, but hearing other people echo the same things that I had experienced for years as a student alone, um, it helped me realize, hey, we need to actually talk about this, because there are many, many people who deal with their UMass realities alone. And with that, I'll pass it off to other people who are dealing with UMass realities.
Yeah, this is David again. Would anyone else like to respond to that question?
I can. This is Katie speaking. Josh, there sharing that. And I think for me, the biggest barrier has been just trying to prove to people that I am deaf enough. If you meet me in person and my hair is down, it's very difficult to tell that I'm deaf because you can't see my hearing aids. I speak orally, and I also don't know sign language. And so to like most people, you would have no idea. And sometimes, while that can be a good thing, it can also be really difficult when I'm trying to explain to people that there are certain things that I need. And even though I do pretty well in the world for someone who's deaf, that doesn't take away from the fact that I still need certain accommodations, such as closed captioning on Zoom tonight. I would not be able to understand any of you if we did not have that. And so just trying to make people understand and make people not doubt you when you are asking for something that you genuinely need and you would not be able to, for less of a better term, survive in this world without. But yeah.
Yeah, Griffin.
Yeah, and I don't, this is Griffin, I don't want to take too much space from other people speaking, but just to contextualize what both Josh and Katie was speaking to, was people, professors, like faculty, administration, just seems to be a huge problem with understanding just basic disability stuff. And you think about how people with disabilities are 20 to 25% of the population. I've talked to department heads who don't know the word ableism, who don't know how to refer to people with disabilities. Like, what do we, not even like identity first versus whatever, but literally like how, what do you, like, just not even. So there are institutional and top down problems with how disability is understood. I've gotten emails back from people that say, "Oh, we respect people with disabilities. We love how strong they are," and da da da. And it's like I'm complaining about an accessibility barrier. Coming back and saying, like how individually we can overcome it. It's just there's just no understanding, and it's just something that would take some just basic listening, or just read a book. Like it's just so hard to get that into people's heads, I think, on an institutional level.
Yeah, absolutely, Griffin. And it can be, this is David again, it can be really frustrating when there's not even a baseline that exists there. I think that speaks to the importance of the work that we're describing, and also the fact that it can be incredibly tiring to constantly have to explain and teach people what they should arguably already know or be very willing to learn. I just want to do a quick check-in with folks. Would everyone feel comfortable with doing the next two questions and then taking the break after that? I'm seeing some head nods, some thumbs up. Okay, great. So we'll go through the next two questions, then we'll take a 5-minute break and come back and review questions from our audience. Also a reminder to the audience, please feel free to submit your questions now, and then we will shuffle through them once we come back from our intermission. So that being said, let's move on to our next question, which is, what changes would make the biggest impact for the better for disabled people at UMass? And Griffin, would you mind starting us off on this one?
Yeah. I think a lot of people here can speak to personal accessibility and stuff, but I would say just hire people with disabilities. I mean, just get that in there. It's as simple as that. And because once you have those people in there, you have the understanding, and or hire people with disabilities that, have that understanding. So yeah, I'll leave it at that because I've been talking a lot and I want to give space to other people, but yeah, that's my answer.
Thanks, Griffin. Would anyone else want to respond? Maya? Yeah.
Griffin just brought up an important point about having disabled, sorry, this is Maya speaking. Griffin had an important point about having disabled representation directly from community members. And this semester, I actually have a professor who identifies with having a disability. And when they shared that information with me as a disabled student who actually has a similar diagnosis, it was super exciting and super empowering. And I just felt a lot more confident and comfortable with that class. And I could also see how that professor was using their awareness of their own personal experience with disability to make the class significantly more accessible to myself and other students in terms of accommodations. And I think that Josh also brought up a really important point earlier on, is that we need systemic change. Right now, how the university has been handling things. So a little bit more context, for example, I've met with a few different administrators specifically about buttons. Right now, accessible buttons is one of the main focuses of Access UMass. And I had met with different administrators who were like, yes, we should have automatic door openers on every single building. Yes, we should have buttons and sensors to create ease of access, all of these things. And then no follow through, no change, no actual meaningful work was done. And so one thing that I think that really needs to happen is a shift in how the Board of Trustees and the higher up administrators view accessibility and disability. Right now, how they act tells me that they don't care. I am a second-class citizen. I am a second-class student at UMass. When they say "You matter at UMass," that's their promotional slogan for getting parents and prospective students. And yet, when they say that, they're selling the college experience. It's not just the academics, it's the college experience. And I can't access the majority of campus. I bring up access barriers and nothing changes. I have friends who literally have to guess when to cross the street. And now there are even more audible cross-beaconing signals that are broken on the ground. We haven't added more. we've just lost them. And to see this happen is so frustrating. But not only is it a slap in the face to myself, to my friends, to future disabled students who deserve equitable access on campus, it's also showing every other student on campus that this is what accessibility looks like, that this is how it is okay to treat disabled people. So we have future lawyers, future businessmen, future doctors, future nurses being shown this level of accessibility, being taught this level of disability awareness, where we have professors talking about eugenics and just microaggressing disabled people in classes. That is happening as we speak during the semester. And so UMass is setting this precedent for people who will literally, like future engineers, people who will literally be building our future society. UMass is teaching every single one of these students that this is what accessibility looks like, and it is okay to treat disabled students as second-class citizens. And that is, for me, one of the most frustrating things. And I think addressing that and considering that fact with how the university moves forward with accessibility would be one of the most meaningful changes to create equitable access.
Thank you for that, Maya. Hillary, go ahead.
Just real quick, I would build off of what Maya and Griffin shared. And I would say on an institutional level, make it possible for staff to support disabled students. Most of the rules, and I would argue like the foundation of universities, are set up to protect the university at all costs and really don't care at all about students. And so if we could shift away from protecting the university at all costs and do what is actually good for students, including disabled students, and if we could center the most marginalized students in our work as staff, I think we could see huge changes for people. I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks for that, Hillary. Yeah, Katie, go ahead.
And this is Katie speaking. I think maybe not a change that would make the biggest impact, but still an impact nevertheless would be training professors and staff on individuals with disabilities. Exactly, like a course, like for students, we have to take when we enter the UMass, like we have to take certain tests. We had to take a sexual assault assessment in class. We had to take an alcohol screening class as well. Why not make professors take an entire class based on disability, how to recognize that students might have disabilities, how to best accommodate students that have disabilities, and also like even like just to make it a, if you want to work at UMass, this is what you need to complete in order to do it. And maybe not everyone would take it seriously, but at least it would plant the seed in their head of something to look out for. And I think that it could definitely make a big impact and kind of get the ball rolling in their heads of, hey, this is real and you need to, if you're going to work here, this is something that you need to be aware of.
Thanks for that, Katie. This is David again. I think, yeah, at the very least, a baseline of introduction to like, this is how we conceptualize disability. This is how we think about it. And this is how we're inclusive of disabled individuals could definitely be a great start. And Hillary, as you were talking, this phrase kind of kept popping into my head, which was profit over people. And I think that rings true a lot, and we need to flip that. It needs to be people over profits, because that's what's being advertised, as you were saying, Maya, is people first, and we need to walk the walk on that in many ways. I'm going to move on to our last question, which is similar to the one we just asked, which is, what's one action the administration could take to improve the campus climate as it relates to people with disabilities? I think we've had some great examples, but would anyone like to add anything to that?
Hi, this is Josh speaking. So hard to narrow it down to one action. For me, it's a tie between making sure that you have a disabled person in a position of power where meaningful systemic change can actually happen, and appropriate staffing. And I'm honestly, I'm going to have to go with appropriate staffing because I felt what it was like to not have that. Accessibility and assistive technology and that whole side of things, that can't be a one-person job. Disability services can't be a very small team servicing literally thousands of students. Ensuring that you have appropriate budget earmarked, that you're doing your due diligence when you procure new technologies, that they are accessible, that that's not a test after the fact, you know, all of that, making sure that that disability is seen, is understood, that you're really valuing it and you're not doing it to avoid a lawsuit, but because you actually care about the lives of the people that are on your campus, without whom none of these administrators would have jobs. So, you know, just treat your people kindly, hire well, put the money where it needs to go.
Thanks for that, Josh. This is David again. Zach, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was. This is Zach. I can't, like Josh said, it's hard to narrow it down to just one thing. I mean, there are too many things. But I think for me, one of the most important things is just ensuring that those that come to campus, whether they be faculty, staff, students, what have you, that they are truly informed and not informed in the sense where it's like, oh, you get all your information from stereotypes or social media or what have you, but that they've actually had conversations with real people and they see that, these people have full abundant lives outside of their own thoughts, outside of what they thought, that outside of what they assumed to know about them. And just the idea that it's like, as I mentioned earlier, the worthiness of being treated as a human, and to be seen as somebody worthy of love, of care, of respect, of all these things that we give able-bodied people without a second thought. And just that idea that because what people don't seem to understand is that you can become disabled at any point in your life. It can literally happen to anyone. And, obviously disability looks different for everyone. But when that happens, you have to change your world and you have to change the things around you to adapt to that new, to the new identity, and to how you want to navigate things and to how you want to move through the world. And now it shouldn't take every single person in this world to become disabled for things to become accessible. I mean, I would hope not. But at least for us, for UMass, I think, just for anyone coming to the university, like I said, whether they be students, faculty, staff, what have you, that they truly be informed about the population that they would be either working with or going to school with, or whatever the case may be, and that they treat them with respect, and that they're not condescending, and that they're actually willing to learn, and not willing to be closed-minded.
Thanks for that, Zach. This is David again. And I think that ties into Katie's response as well. Like, there's a very easy way to do that, which is offer trainings to everyone who comes into UMass that explore disability to better educate everyone about it. It seems like now is probably a good time to take a pause for a break. I want to remind our audience that you can enter questions into the Q&A and we'll respond to them after the break. we're going to take a 5-minute intermission. So we'll be back around 8:23 if my math is correct. And please stick around because we'll have more discussion after our brief intermission. See everybody in a couple minutes. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had a nice intermission break. As folks are rejoining, just as a reminder, you're welcome to continue to pose questions in the Q&A section. We've had a couple come in, but would be happy to take some more. I'm going to go ahead and read out the first question, if that's okay with folks. So our first question is, are there support groups provided by UMass for people with disabilities? All right, Maya.
Hi, sorry, I wasn't sure if I should wait or not. This is Maya speaking. I don't know if this is run by the university, sponsored by the university specifically, but there is an autism support group that meets on Wednesdays in Whitmore. There's a sign, like, if you come in through the basement that faces CCPH, there's a sign that tells you where they meet. But they're Wednesdays at 5, and a few autistic individuals worked with administrators with starting this group. I've attended a couple of meetings, and I really appreciate the space that has been created and the respect and understanding of the nuance of different autistic experiences, different autistic labels, and making sure that everyone feels respected in the space. So that is available, and I think it's pretty cool.
Thanks, Maya. It's nice to always hear about like new groups getting started. I think it was just the Alliance when I was there, so I'm happy there are more budding groups popping up. Yeah, Griffin, I saw your hand go up as well.
Yeah, I wanted to give some more information on that group because that was actually started by my boss at the Macy program in disability services, where I work as a grad assistant, and a prior Macy student who now works for the Macy program, I believe was the one that really spearheaded that group. Oh, thank you, Rachel. So MAICEI. It is about transitioning transitional students on IEPs in high school into a college environment to try to break some of those access barriers that those students have faced and face. And yeah, I've heard really great things, and it's my boss is an amazing guy. So I think anyone who can, so that is on Wednesdays. That group is on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock to 6:30ish. It is in Whitmore, so the administration building where disability services is, the main disability services office. And if you walk in through the parking lot, you'll see signs for it, the doors to the parking lot. I can also, when I stop talking, I will post some information. Maybe I can get someone to post who to email for that. But that is a great group. And there's also, maybe people can speak more to this that go to it more often than I do, but the Disability Culture Club is also not really a support group, but it's a place where people gather.
Thanks for that, Griffin. And I don't know the specific details of it, but I believe there is also a staff and faculty group at UMass called UMADA, and that was a support group specifically for staff and faculty with disabilities. Perhaps someone else knows a bit more about what's going on with that group right now. Griffin, I saw your hand go up. Do you have any more information about UMaida?
No, I'm sorry, before you said that, but this is a great time to plug the Caruth Silver Cultural Center, that website that has all the information on all these groups. So I will make sure that that link gets posted in the chat and you can visit that. But I also saw Kim was about to speak on UMaida.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Kim. So UMaida is, I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for, and someone can maybe help me, but it's Alliance Against Ableism and Disability Access. UMass. Anyway, the bottom line is it's not just faculty and staff, but also PhD students. So if you're a PhD student and you're looking for some support, it's a good group to join as well. And it meets every other week, I think on Mondays at 11 o'clock. And I know they talked about the Alliance Against Ableism, and currently the Alliance Against Ableism is also meeting on Fridays at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if anybody's interested in that, you can reach out to just about anyone that's attending this meeting today, and we'll be able to give you some more information. But I believe we're going to send out that information to everyone, and Rachel put that in the chat.
Thanks so much for that, Kim. Did anyone else want to add anything about any active groups going on campus? It sounds like the Cultural Center website is the place to check out because there's a list of them there. Yeah,
Hi,
Maya.
this is Maya speaking. I should have mentioned this. Access UMass is another group. We've mentioned it a few times, but it meets on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. in the Student Union. And that is the group that runs the social media accounts for Access UMass and is currently also pushing for different accessibility things on campus. And there's also a Discord for that if people are interested.
Excellent. Thanks, Maya. So let's move on to the next question. Our next question is, if Chancellor Subaswamy were watching this Zoom right now, what would you tell him?
I'd like to take first point on this. Too many things. First and foremost, make sure that disability services, and I believe it's the workplace accessibility office or the accessibility workplace office. I forget how the phrasing of that acronym works, but make sure that those two spaces are fully funded and that they have the staff needed to ensure that faculty, staff, and students are supported, and that there, is a true sense of support, of care, of all these things that we've mentioned here tonight. And also just so that the staff at these places feel supported, because I can't imagine being one of maybe 3 or 4 case managers at disability services right now, managing 12 to 15,000, possibly more students with disabilities, and just that burnout. I can't even imagine that burnout must be real. So definitely making sure that both of those places are fully funded and that they get the support that they need for themselves. That that there be a mandatory training for people who come in with regards to students with disabilities. Well, students, but people more broadly with disabilities. That that professors be mandated to respond to and adhere to any and all documented and not yet documented disabilities, because I've heard stories of professors not adhering to those, and that the struggle for that is real. I consider myself privileged in the sense where I have not run into that issue, but I know people that have, and it's like, do you not want us to succeed simply because of your ableist thought? But yeah, I'll get off my soapbox before I keep going.
Thanks for that, Zach. Does anyone else have anything they would want to say to the Chancellor? Maya? Yeah.
There's so many things to rant about. There's so many different constructive criticisms and I think points that we've talked about throughout today. So I'm just going to give myself the space to rant. I was denied an automatic door opener when I first started using a wheelchair because it cost too much. I was told it cost $3,000 and that was too expensive. As a broke college student, I was like, oh yeah, that's too much. My own personal safety and my emotional support animal, because I had a dog at the time, myself and my dog's safety is definitely not worth the university investing $3,000 at this point in time. Me and my internalized ableism will take this and accept the fact that you think $3,000 is too much for a door opener, and yet we have sports coaches being paid millions. The juxtaposition makes no sense. We are not adequately supporting our athletes. Like, they have to take time away from their classes. They get more accommodations and extensions for classwork to be able to do their sports activity than disabled students get for support when we are paying full price for our academic experience. There are so many other issues, but it's just like the slap in the face being a student here. You matter at UMass. Please make it true, Subaswamy. Please make it true.
Thanks for that compelling anecdote, Maya. Would anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that? Yeah, Josh.
Hello, Chancellor. I understand you have a big job. You're trying to balance the well-being of a lot of people and maintain budget and all those wonderful things. I need you to understand that not embracing this identity fully, it impacts people's lives. It impacts their will to want to live. Because if this is not taken seriously, what you are telling the people, the staff in your universities, the students in your universities, is that I see you and I hear the words coming out of your mouth, but I don't care. And that can do some real harm to people's self-esteem, to their sense of self-worth, all of that. To be exposed to that reality day in and day out, and to have to turn every day into a fight. Able-bodied people, every day is not a fight to exist and survive and have your voice be heard and know that you belong in that institution, the same as any non-disabled person. I'm just going to ask you, what kind of chancellor do you want to be remembered as, Swami? Do you want to be remembered as somebody who lifted up the community that you care to really, really want to do good for? Do you want to be seen as a chancellor who did it because it makes the bottom line of your budget better, or because it protects you from legal recourse? Do you want to be seen as the chancellor who really believes that every person at UMass matters? That's what all of your slogans say. That's what the blanket that my dog sleeps on every night says. You matter at UMass. I bought one right before I walked off campus. UMass stays with us. The experiences that we have on campus define the rest of our lives. The person that I walked into your university as was not the same person that I left. I'm grateful because I learned some extremely hard lessons in my time as a student and a staff member, but they were unnecessary. And you have a chance to stop all of this and to make it better for the succeeding generations. Will you accept that challenge?
Well said, Josh. Well said. Thank you for that. Maya, yeah.
I'm just over here clapping in full support of everything that you said.
Right. Taking a look at our next question. What do you want to say to the disabled students on campus? Or I guess, what would you say to the disabled students on campus that perhaps hasn't already been said? Yeah, Griffin.
This is Griffin. I think I would look back. I think looking back at my undergraduate degree and I didn't even conceptualize myself as somebody with a disability, someone that was deserving of disability services support, and I really needed it. And so the fact that you're here already, I would say like understand that like your position that you're in and the thoughts that you have about yourself, about getting those accommodations, about being oppressed, that those are very valid. That like to internal, like you shouldn't be internalizing that ableism onto yourself. That these are very structural problems. These are systemic problems. These are problems that are faced by everybody. Like that, all right, they're faced by everybody, but they're faced most disproportionately by 20 to 25% of the population. That remember that carry that with you. That no matter what you like, people will try to gaslight you. People will try to say like this is not our problem. Like this is something that you have to overcome. But really understand that this is structural. This is hundreds of years of development of our systems and our society, and especially in the last 50 years of how we run things, especially in higher education. That the university treats students like commodities, like they're warehousing students to take the most money they can, and people with disabilities face the most out of that, because when you skimp, people with disabilities are the first to feel that. So just know, just always know, and try not to internalize any of the shit that comes at you. That just it's systemic. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but
Thanks, Griffin. Certainly important to at least highlight and be able to put words to that systemic oppression that people are experiencing. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? What would you say to other disabled students at UMass? Katie, yeah.
This is Katie speaking. I think the biggest thing that I would say to you is don't give up when you are fighting for what you need. People are going to tell you no. They're going to tell you that you don't need it, but you're the only person who knows you. You're the only person who knows your needs. And if you think you need something and you're legally entitled to it, by all means, do what you need to do to get it. I have, maybe not been the nicest to my professors when they've denied me something, but at the end, I've gotten what I've needed because I wasn't the nicest. But it's so important to just make sure that if you think that you need something, do not back down and do what you can to get it, because you are so deserving of anything that you might need to access the world, just like anybody else.
Thanks for that, Katie. Anything else anyone would want to add to that? Yeah, Josh.
I just want you all to know that you're not alone. We all come into disability in different ways. Some of us are born into it. Some of us acquire it in college. The title of leader and mentor and all of that often just gets dropped on us because people don't understand our lived experience. I can't tell you how many UMass bus stops I was standing at and people would come over and go, oh my God, you're amazing. I'm like, no, I'm 10 minutes late for class and the bus hasn't come yet. No, I'm not amazing, right? You're not alone. All of this, it can be really heavy to hold. It can change you and shape you in ways that can take a while to unravel some of those knots once they get tied really tight. But there are support systems out there. You're not alone. It's not a problem to ask for help. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you can't handle this. It doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job when you were trying to lone wolf your activism. But, one person can't change this. And it's unfair for you to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. There are communities out there. There is an incredible network of support available, and there's strength in numbers. Don't give up. Keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, Maya.
I kind of want to expand a bit off of what Katie said that also connects into what Josh just said. You're not alone, you're valid. When your professors deny you things like that you deserve legal access to, like you should have that. Whatever your access needs are, it is worth it. You are worth it. Whatever costs, like financial costs that it takes on the university, whatever, that is on them to handle. You deserve equitable access. You deserve access. You are deserving of being able to exist in this world like everyone else, even if that means this, that, or the other thing. Different access needs, you deserve it.
Absolutely. Are folks okay with moving on to the next question? Does that sound okay? Cool. So someone stated, I'm here as a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. We've been charged with advocating for disabled students on campus on a more administrative level. What do you believe is the most urgent access barrier that needs to be addressed on campus? I know that there are probably many of them, so we can take a moment to think about that. Yeah, Hillary, I saw your hand go up first.
Yeah, this is Hillary speaking. I think I appreciate the question, and I think that, and I also think at the same time that question might be part of the problem. I think oftentimes oppressed populations, including disabled folks, are hit with this myth of resource scarcity and that there are things that are more important than other things. And so I think if perhaps we expand that question to be like, what are all of the access barriers that we need to address and actually start doing them, it might be a little bit more productive of a conversation and thinking about, instead of thinking about like, what is the most urgent or what do we supposedly have only the money to fix like one or two issues, when in reality we know that UMass actually has quite a bit of money, and it's just about where it gets allocated to, including like whose pockets it's going into.
That is a great reframing of the question, Hillary. Thank you for that. And I think to your point, if we respond to the most urgent need, it also sort of inherently excludes others' needs, and that doesn't really sound fair either. So, yeah, Maya.
I really appreciate your point of saying that, Hillary, because that is something that I had not fully thought about or considered myself. Like with Access UMass, I would frequently pose to the group and say like, what's a really pressing access need? Like, what do you guys need first? Which is like how you just explained, it doesn't work that way. That being said, there are access needs to have an equitable access experience on campus, which is extremely important and deserving. But there are also full-on legitimate safety hazards where students are at risk of actually dying. Like I mentioned, I have a friend who has to guess when they can cross the street. And so we shouldn't have to pick, but right now, the way that the university is currently run and how accessibility currently is, it is extremely dangerous for disabled students in many different locations and many different areas. There are legitimate safety hazards like the bathroom access issue. There are only 4 buildings on campus that are not dorms that I can go to the bathroom in, which means that if I can't find a bathroom, I can create a safety hazard, and the university needs to take more action to change those things. All of the access needs matter, but there are actual safety issues that the university has not yet addressed.
This is Katie speaking as well. I think another thing that again, not to like make anything more important than other things because it's not. And hopefully we are out of winter now, but shoveling of sidewalks and snow removal and how icy things have been has been such a huge issue. Like even for myself, like I have slipped and fallen and all of that on ice just because it hasn't been shoveled. I can't imagine for someone who has like a mobility disability or in a wheelchair or uses like a cane or anything like that. It's like for them, it's just that is such a safety issue. And it seems that UMass doesn't care when it comes to basic. Can a student walk around and not expect to fall during the winter? So that has been a really big problem as well.
Thanks for that, Katie.
Hey, this is
Griffin, then Josh. Thanks.
This is Griffin. Yeah, I really appreciate as part of the advisory committee coming out and asking, but I also want to just like point to the problem in that too, that kind of brings up as to the initial challenge is that this accessibility advisory committee was made up to be about people expressing their challenges and creating that and pushing that towards the administration. It was supposed to be advisory in nature. And part of that, yeah, is collecting, student and faculty challenges. But that's like the people in the committee should be the ones that are in the ground, ear to the ground, know what's going on already. That shouldn't be a question that members of the advisory committee are asking, because everything that everyone's brought up has been requested to the administration multiple times throughout this year. So that should already be known. That should have already been taken care of. And I think that that's a challenge that comes up with committees, is that we say, okay, we're going to do this committee, and now it creates a further barrier because now it's needing to go through the committee, needing to go through everything else. And so, yeah, so like, I really appreciate that kind of coming out, trying to find out information, but that should be something that that is yeah. So but I also I don't know who you are and stuff, so I mean, like, that's not like it's not to say anything against you specifically, but because I probably know you, I know everybody in the committee, but yeah, I think that that's part of like more on a structural level, more on a level of like, this is like something, this should be, that's what I'm trying to say. If that makes any sense.
And Josh, I saw you had your hand up.
yes. Physical and digital accessibility need to be taken together at the same time. I think that's an issue. Is historically, physical accessibility has been handled by one entity that understands it up to a point, of which there has been minimal disability representation on that committee. So one, make sure that as you're forming committees and things like that, that there is actually representation of multiple disabled humans on that committee, so that you can gain multiple perspectives. So that way you avoid tokenizing one person. That said, accessible signage is huge. I know for me as a blind person, and as a technologist, one of the issues that I tried to solve for about 10 years was the idea of walking into a building. And when I would walk into a building as a student, and it also happened as a staff member when I would teach courses on accessibility, walking into a building, there's no braille. Some buildings would have lack of braille signage. Some buildings would have braille signage, but it would be incorrect. I saw this in brand new buildings that had just been built, pride and joy of everybody's hard-earned UMass dollars spent on these beautiful buildings, and the braille is wrong. And so coming up with structural supports technologically that could mitigate that, part of and I understand it's still in development. There was an indoor navigation app that was developed about 10 years ago that is still living on campus, called Percept. And there was an outdoor navigation app called Campus Access. Marrying those two things together would create a really cohesive, crowdsourced access network where you could report access barriers. They could be handled appropriately. I think we have to just stop triaging access barriers as a level of importance. Every single access barrier matters. The bathroom thing, especially, you know, myself not finding bathrooms without signs on them. I can't even imagine as a wheelchair user, if you're in a class and you leave that class, you need to use the bathroom immediately upon leaving class, and there is no accessible bathroom for a mile until you get whatever that next building is on campus that has it. We need to stop centrally locating things or doing it where it's the most convenient. Everybody's access needs matter. You cannot prioritize one above another because everybody's lives matter. If you solve these things collectively at the same time, it's going to benefit everybody across the board. A university that's inclusively designed overall is just going to work well for everybody, especially as members of the non-disabled population age into, become infirmed into, or otherwise acquire a disability.
Thanks for that, Josh. We have about 3 minutes until Elodie will give our closing remarks. Real quickly, if we could just maybe have one or two people respond to, are there any employment or assistantship opportunities open to students with disabilities who want to contribute to making UMass a more welcoming and accessible place for people with disabilities? Yeah, Griffin.
If no one has a plug, yes, the ATC, the Assistive Technology Center, that if I think Maya can probably maybe talk to that a little bit more, but Elodie just plug that. And also the MAICEI program, MAICEI. You can be a peer mentor. It is an internship credit, but it does have eventual paid opportunities. But checking them out and getting involved in that, it's about bringing, like I said before, transition aged high school students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, breaking down some of the barriers to higher education for them, and doing that. So yeah, if you're interested in that, check that out.
And this is David again. I will add, at least historically, I know Disability Services has hired student workers. Many of them have disabilities themselves. So that is one other quick plug. Does anyone else want to add anything to that?
I can't speak to her hiring practices, but I know that Elodie has said that she works there, so they must be hiring somebody. Assistive Technology Center, especially for those of you with interest in engineering or computer science, also look into them.
This is Hillary. I would just say the Stonewall Center, we do events and programming aimed at queer and trans disabled students.
Sorry, I didn't ever get this position. Sorry, this is Maya speaking. I applied to work at one of the dining halls when I first started having my disability. I went to Frank Dining Hall and spoke to the manager and was like, I don't know exactly what I'm physically capable of, but this is within that range. And they were willing to try and create a position for me to swipe people in that worked with what my physical access needs were. The staff at Frank Dining Hall are truly amazing. So I would recommend starting with Frank. I really appreciate all the staff there. I can't speak to the other dining halls.
Thanks for that, Maya. And I think it is about time to turn the mic over to Elodie for our closing remarks. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, so just thank you everyone for coming and listening to what folks have to say. And if you have come to multiple events in our speaker series, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your support. In the next couple of days, we will be sending out a post-event survey, and we hope that you'll provide us with some feedback on our event this evening. Those who complete the survey will be entered into a random drawing for a post-event gift. Additionally, a couple weeks after this event, we will have a captioned video that will go out to folks who missed it or want to watch it again. And hopefully in one of those emails, or perhaps another email, I don't quite know yet, we will send out links to all of the resources that we discussed today. So keep your eyes posted for that. And thank you all again so much for coming.